Namaste. I welcome you all to the post-lunch session on the day one of the online conference on Hindu meditation traditions and techniques being organized by Indic Academy. So we will start off this post-lunch session with an invited talk. This invited special session, special talk is by Dr. Vinayachandra and Dr. Anuradha Choudhry. The title of the talk, or the topic of the lecture, special lecture, is Dhyana and its global impact and experiential perspective. So a short introduction to the speakers. Dr. Vinayachandra Banavati obtained his PhD in Sanskrita with a focus on psychology from Pondicherry University in 2009. He also has a master's degree in yogic sciences from Yasvyasa University, Bangalore, in addition to 3 master's degree in psychology, English, and Sanskrit. So he is my Gurukula Sahapati. We both of us studied together in Veda Vijnana Gurukulam for 6 years. In traditional, we trained in traditional education of Vedas and Shastras, the Krishna Yajurveda Taittiriya Shakha, and the Pada Vakya Pramana Shastras, Nyaya Shastra, primers of Nyaya Shastra, Vyakarana Shastra, and Mimamsa Shastra, and also Shankara Bhashya on Prasthana Traya, that is Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, and Brahma Sutra. Hence, Dr. Vinayachandra is well trained in traditional systems of knowledge, as he has his PhD degree in psychology also. So is a very good blend of contemporary. Is aware of contemporary methodologies and also very well rooted in traditional education and training. And he is currently serving as the director of Indica Yoga, which is part of Indic Academy. So he works based out of Bangalore. And he also holds various consultative positions in various academic institutions, like being an adjunct professor at Veda Vijnana Shodha Samsthanam, which is recognized under the Karnataka Samskrita University. And in several institutions, he plays his, he shares his inputs and experience. So as a faculty of contemplative and behavioral sciences, in a visiting professor in the Sri Sri University, Cuttack, Orissa, and then at the Department of Languages and Culture in the Ghent University, Belgium. And he also serves as a visiting scholar professor at the School of Applied Psychology, Zurich University of Applied Sciences, at Switzerland, and also a faculty of Applied Psychology in SRH Hochschule, if I'm pronouncing it right. It's a German word, Heidelberg, Germany, and many such educational academic institutions. So he is a visiting professor. He travels widely, means especially in the pre-corona era. So every year he used to travel to various countries and bring or take the wisdom of yoga, dhyana to the various with the global connect. So he touches the along with Dr. Anuradha Choudhry. So he touches the global community with the yogic and the Vedic knowledge. And he was also invited to serve as a chief consultant to the Committee of National Education Policy 2017, constituted by the Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India, to develop the areas of culture and value education and Indic knowledge system. He has served as a visiting faculty or resource person in many international bodies and organizations. And his areas of research of interest includes Sanskrit, yoga psychology, philosophy and Indian culture, history and knowledge systems. And he has published in several journals and many papers published and a few books on the subject. And he's also curated and organized many festivals and conferences and workshops and camps on these themes. So really happy and privileged to have Dr. Vinayachandra here, and also Dr. Anuradha Choudhry, who presently works as the assistant professor at the Humanities and Social Sciences Department and at IIT Kharagpur. And Dr. Anuradha Choudhry also has her PhD in Samskrita She is a very excellent communicator. She teaches applied Sanskrita, and she has won many accolades for her teaching skills in IIT Kharagpur. And she has her basic education training at the Auroville. And along with Dr. Vinayachandra, she has traveled across the globe and taught Sanskrita, Indian culture, and Dhyana and other yoga practices to the global community at large. So really happy to welcome Dr. Vinayachandra and also Dr. Anuradha Choudhry ji. And now I request them to Dr. Vinayachandra and Dr. Anuradha Choudhry ji to please share their insights on the topic, that is Dhyana and its global impact and experiential perspective. Yeah, as I mentioned initially, so their travels across the globe is very well known, and we know that as I mentioned in the course of their resume, so various institutions, various groups of yoga practitioners across the globe, they have interacted with them. And so I would like to ask Dr. Vinayachandra and Dr. Anuradha Choudhry to share their experiences, the experiential perspective.
Namaste, and thank you, Jairamanji, for this generous introduction. From morning, we have been listening to scholarly presentations, especially with beginning with the comprehensive overview provided by Swamiji and then by Ramchandra Bhattji. I think we are really having an immersion into various kinds of dhyana techniques, practices, traditions, and also the perspectives with which they have unfolded. So this will not be a serious talk like that. So I just want to put that caveat before we begin. What we thought was we could share some of our experiences, how this dhyana has left its global footprints across the world, how it has touched and transformed lives. So we'll be sharing it mostly from that perspective. Anuji, you want to add something?
Namaste, and I'd like to also say both dhanyavadaha to Dr. Jairamanji and to Indica for organizing this event, and also my sadhana pranams to all the Jeshtas who have spoken before us. So I'm hoping that my internet is all right and you're able to hear me. Can you hear me clearly? All right. So as Vinayji was saying that the introduction of the Dhyana tradition, especially the Eastern version of it, coming in from India, coming in from China, from Japan, has so coming in through India through the yoga practices themselves, and also through China, Japan, all these regions through Buddhism, has played a significant role in shaping many more minds than we are aware of, many more important minds across the globe. And these people have then led to transformational contributions in the development of knowledge traditions across the world. And so I think what we will be trying to do is to just try and present some connections that we might have experienced on our travels and highlight the way in which lives have been changed and new knowledge has emerged in the process of this connection. So Vinayachandra ji, over to you, please.
Sure. Let me begin with the focus on scientific studies on meditation, without going to the details, without burdening anyone with statistics and figures, but just to give you a feel that the world of science, modern science, has taken this as a serious pursuit, because there is a well documented evidence to show how it is benefiting and aiding towards a better life. So just to put together a few things. One, people have been, I mean, it has been well known today that it helps towards general wellness. So people are practicing it because of that reason. Then there's also this studied understanding that it reduces anxiety, maybe some studies point towards this stress reduction is about 60% in the participants who have gone through various kinds of experimentations. Then there's a reduced risk of cardiovascular diseases, reduced BP. So this kind, I mean, all these kinds of the aspects that have been troubling our modern life and society. I think in all these aspects, as I said, whether stress or cardiovascular diseases or attention deficiency in attention span or PMS symptoms for women and insomnia, all these seem to be the problems such as these have had a very beneficial treatment from practice of meditation. What kind of practice, what meditation, we'll look into those things little later, but these aspects have been well documented today. There are umpteen number of research papers which show that benefits helps in dealing with all these kinds of issues. So this is point one, that the scientific community at large has now realized and also are taking proactive steps to understand the process of meditation, because they can easily recognize how it has helped people in dealing with these issues. So this is one. And going next, what are the different areas, different domains of life where you can see the play of meditation, how meditation is touching people's lives? So one, a big community or big population that you can see is the number of yoga practitioners. There is a steady increase for last at least 3 to 4 decades in the number of yoga practitioners across the world. Today, there is an estimate that there are 300 million yoga practitioners. That is about 30 crore people practicing yoga daily across the world, which may not be a fully absolute estimate, because there must be much more. Like the way it gets documented in US, it may not get documented in many other parts of the world. So what we are estimating is just a pointer, but the actual number might be much more than this. So that is 30 crore yoga practitioners across the world. It's a big number. Not only this, there's also another statistic which says that the number of people who are practicing meditation, not necessarily coming from the yoga field, maybe some population, there is an overlap between yoga population and the meditating population, but even those who don't have any yoga background, even there, the estimation is anywhere between 200 to 500 crore. 50 crore population practicing meditation, different sorts of meditation, right? So it's such a big number which are into meditation. We have not acknowledged, we are not even aware that it is actually touching so many people across the globe. So meditation practitioners, in that again we'll come to some details as to what kinds of meditation practitioners are there. It's not just someone who is very keen on a spiritual life. Today, meditation has entered workspace. So in many companies across the world, they are introducing meditation because they know it helps them to deal with the stress. It empowers them. It allows them to anchor in themselves, which will also contribute towards in enhanced productivity, which is what they require. But whatever the reason is, meditation has been introduced in the workspace. There are many schools, as Acharyaji was pointing towards this in his presentation in the morning, in education itself, bringing meditation as a conscious element of learning. So that is also starting. It's happening in many schools, not just in India, but even across the world. In fact, in many US schools, it's there. In many departments of psychology, okay, again, background we can always discuss, but most of the psychology departments, or many, if not most, have a contemplative aspect added to it. There is a mindfulness center associated with the psychology department. So in education, in workspace, meditation has entered. But again, this is not the only places. look into the academic discipline of positive psychology. Like within the branch of psychology, though there have been various twists and turns and changes that have happening over a period of time, starting from humanist psychology and today in a more evidence-based manner emerging out of positive psychology, there is a very strong foundation to bring in contemplative traditions and practices embedded into the discipline of psychology. Reflection, meditation, all these are well sought techniques within the scope of psychology. In fact, in some places, if you have noticed, the name psychology is also being changed. For example, in the Sri Sri University, they are not calling it as a psychology department. They're calling it as Department of Contemplative Studies and Behavioral Sciences. The two extremes of psychology. One is sometimes it used to get it reduced into behavioral sciences, and the other times it's only about the philosophical part. So combining these two, it's called as Contemplative Studies and Behavioral Sciences. So contemplation, meditation has come in academic discipline as well. Again, not limited here. Today, there's a lot of discussion that is happening around contemplative leadership, management and contemplative leadership. It's an area where they have found that if you bring in these aspects of reflection, contemplation into the training of leadership, the way they deal with themselves and the people is much more effective than the other ways of leadership. And lastly, again, not reduced here or limited to this, a big challenge that humanity is facing is in the areas of climate action and sustainability. Again, there are movements that are started as mindfulness climate action or contemplative climate action. There are some courses introduced in some universities across the globe pertaining to this. So in this manner, the word meditation, mindfulness, contemplation, they might vary a little bit, but this is going to be the way of the future. And that's why it's coming into different domains in this manner. So a larger canvas of our life seems to be slowly, gradually getting influenced by contemplative practices. Before going further, maybe Anuradha ji, you might want to add something at this stage.
I just an
Yeah.
introduction here. Now, when you speak of the contemplative practices, now when we observe the global arena, there is one formal academic yogic audience or students or participants, and there is the society at large of the global society at large outside. So how do you see yoga, especially yoga and dhyana, being accepted in the academia and the general public, or means non-academic, the practitioner audience? So I'd like to have your thoughts on that, and Anuradhaji's thoughts in the global setting, not only in India, outside especially.
Sure. Anuradha ji, maybe you want to come in first for this.
Right. So as Vinayji mentioned, that we do see the direct influences of the benefit of yoga in various academic disciplines, like in medicine, for example. So we've got our friend Smita Malaya, who's there in the Anderson,
MD Anderson,
Anderson.
cancer
Yes.
researcher.
She's a mind-body specialist. So where they're seeing that cancer patients who've been receiving radiation and are able to experience greater speeds of recovery by doing meditation. But here they are looking at meditation not just, through yoga and of course meditative practices. And you have a variety of meditative practices that are there. So you can have just plain meditation, you have mantra meditation, you can have breath meditation, yoga nidra. All these are different techniques that are being proposed and studied very, very systematically with the help of instrumentations. So I think this combination in the academic world of the application of the study on, let's say, on health, is one area that is being very seriously developed, written about, and as newer technologies emerge, they're being able to do better studies with neurosciences on seeing the impact of these practices on the human body itself. So that's one side of it. Then you have applications of this, like Vinayji mentioned already, in the field of psychology. What's very interesting to know that a lot of the founders of the new movements of psychology, the new schools of psychology, like Martin Seligman himself, was a long-time practitioner of transcendental meditation. Maharishi Yogi's transcendental meditation has had a phenomenal effect on several very accomplished academicians, musicians, sports people, for the enhancement of performance has been one side of this entire contribution of the meditative practices or the contemplative practices. But coming back to academia itself, we see in social science research as well. So in social science research, there are more and more studies that are coming up on seeing how meditation can, or these kind of vipassana, mindfulness practices. So today's more secularized version of vipassana is the mindfulness practice, but we see to what extent its application is being tested in different domains. Like I said, students, they're seeing whether the practice of mindfulness, etc., can help them improve their performance in their studies. Does it help them combat stress? What Vinayji was saying in the beginning. So stress meditation has proven especially successful in helping people calm down in workspaces, in academic spaces, in other kinds of professional spaces. So I would say these are some areas in academia. And we also know that a lot of scientists are inspired by meditative practices, and they then come up with different kinds of contributions. In fact, they say there's a very close connection between Vedanta and these high-end sciences of quantum physics, etc. So we see that whether it's directly or indirectly, in some cases these practitioners talk about it openly, and in others they might not talk about it openly, but their works, their references indicate that there has been a strong influence on their life and on their work of these practices that we have been talking about. So I would like to request Vinayji to say something more on that.
I just have a question here. Now, this conference is about Hindu meditation traditions and techniques. So, in your travels, and in your classes, programs, workshops, so how is the Hinduness of these practices received? Because in Western academia, in Western this thing, we see they would prefer more of a Buddhist orientation to all the practices. So your attempts or your approaches towards conveying the Hinduness of these, your observations and experiences on that will be useful.
So it's a very interesting question, because one is that the practitioner themselves recognizes the value of a practice of the meditation tradition itself. So, and at that point, it doesn't really necessarily bother them whether it's Hindu or Buddhist or anything. So that's a secondary detail in a particular sense, all right? Because it's this ability to be able to stand back and observe. And I think what meditation really offers is the possibility to make choices. It's the empowerment of choice, of reaction, because of the distance you acquire through the practice of contemplation. That's the faculty that is developed. But the Hindu question is a very interesting one, because sometimes one might hesitate to say the Om. So we hear yoga teachers in particular who are sometimes hesitant about reciting the Om in their initial classes, or bringing in Shiva mantras, etc. And they're hesitant about bringing in Shiva mantras, etc. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes.
All right. No, because it froze, so I was wondering. So they might be hesitant to use these names. The yoga teachers in the yoga teacher community, there might be these hesitations, because as we anticipate, the complexity of the Godheads is something that is not so easy to resonate with sometimes. But what we find invariably, and we are always very deeply touched by this. We've visited ever so many circles of yoga practitioners. The devotion, so where there are kirtan movements, bhajan movements, because these are these are practices that lead to meditative states. They might not be the closing of all your senses and sitting down and doing that, but they are definitely immersive in the consciousness that they evoke. And in that, we find some of these groups, like in Belgium, we've got so many Western Kirtan Walas. We've had the privilege of interviewing, of having Krishna Das ji on our Indica Yoga platform. And it, this is something that one can only recognize through the actual practice. That when you take these names, at that point, the names don't matter because it fills you. You might not know, they might not know who Krishna is or who Shiva is necessarily, but it's the whole rhythm of it, it's the whole devotional aspect that is embedded in the practice itself that leaves a lasting impact. So we do find that, and then of course, because these names occur, and in certain circles, these names are also directly associated with the godheads. In some of our friend circle, like with the School of Yoga in Brittany, in Rennes, that Rodolphe Millier, he's one of the most senior teachers of Shri Shri Sachidananda from Tamil Nadu, from Chennai. So they actually teach these puja part. You know, they go into the ritual aspect of the Hindu practices, and they have a good student community that learns them, that practices them. So I think that there is an initial hesitation, like I mentioned, because of the unfamiliarity. And I would think that unfamiliarity is also an anticipation in the minds of some teachers because of their unfamiliarity at times. And sometimes they're hesitant not to make a mistake. So what we find with a lot of our European community friends is, European American community friends, is that there is a hesitation to make a mistake, to misrepresent certain things. And that could be one reason to hesitate. The other one is sometimes they are not so sure that people might not come to the practice because of this. So both aspects are there, but we are invariably invariably touched, literally, by the devotion of the complete immersion that they have, and the bhakti with which they chant, and they allow themselves to get lost in the various kinds of chanting-led meditation practices, especially. Over to Vinayji.
Just to add to what Dr. Anu said, and in response to both your questions put together, there's definitely a difference in the way that the academicians perceive this and the practitioners perceive this. There's a lot of openness, enthusiasm, curiosity, even some sense of surrender to new possibilities in the practitioner's world. There is a willingness to try out. There is something that they have started to experience and they want to understand this experience. In fact, we have been very closely associated with one of the groups that is based out of Dublin, but they're present in many other parts of the world too. Many of them have said, like, they practice meditation every day, which is a mantra meditation, which has been given to those initiated in that particular school after 1 or 2 years. So there is a proper initiation process, and after that, each one does invariably, without any fail, whatever their engagements might be, from 7 to 7:30 in the morning, and again more or less in the same time in the evening. For last 20-30 years, there are people who have been doing this, and most of them have said, like, these meditative practices, which comes from the Sanatana Hindu tradition, okay, they have helped them to understand their own roots much better. Like, whatever over a period of time things have emerged within their religious folds, some kashmalas that might have covered up the impurities or certain tendencies of practices which might have crept in, like, it has helped them to remove all those things and connect to that source in a much better manner. So what I'm trying to say is, in the practitioner's world, there's a great openness, but it is quite different in the academician's world. Again, I can't stereotype it as one block. Even within the academicians, maybe I can split it into two: the scientific community and the humanities community. Scientific community is quite open. They're embracing because Their interest is in to understand, to document the effects, whether it is there or not. They are not interested in creating narratives behind them. Whereas a significant population within the academics, that is the humanities community, they are more interested in politics. They are more interested in power play. They are more interested in building conflicting narratives. So this is where their interest lies. They're not interested in meditation. They're not interested in the benefits of the meditation, or they're not interested in to see how humanity is benefiting from the meditation. For a practitioner, for the scientific community, that is important. Therefore, you definitely see a glaring difference between a practitioner's world and an academician's world.
Thank you very much for that insight, Vinayachandra ji and Anuradha ji. I have one last question because we are running out of time. Now, so how the global community perceives the Hindu practices? We saw it from that perspective, from the receiver's perspective. Now, from those who give, means teachers who travel from here abroad to various parts of the world and teach. Now, do you see a reluctance or hesitation in saying that this is Hindu among those teachers, those who travel? And if yes, so how to overcome that reluctance, or how in a non-reluctant manner, say, connect to the original roots? To what would be your suggestions to the teachers who travel, who connect with the global audience, to make this Hindu connection to all these practices like Dhyana, Asana, Pranayama?
I think this question requires a very detailed investigation as to where is the root of the problem and how do we address it. But if I can respond to it in a very brief manner. See, there are a couple of things that are happening because of our colonial experience. In many areas of life, we have been made to believe that the other ways are much better than our own ways. In every aspect of life, meditation, spirituality is also no better. Okay. And what has also come into our mind is this unquestioned, uninvestigated idea of universalism. See, universalism is not such a uncontaminated process as it is made to believe. Like by the idea of universalism, we feel to raise oneself to a state where you're not limited by your own community or your nation or your religion or your immediate surroundings, but to connect with every human being across the globe. It's no doubt a very noble idea. But the universalism that is being projected is not such a neutral concept. It has its origins in the Western, especially the specific traditions of the, I mean, what do you call that? It's the whole lineage that comes from the Jewish to Christianity, where there is a certain notion of universalism.
Abrahamic.
Yeah, from the Abrahamic tradition, you have a certain notion of universalism where it appears to be neutral, but what it is bringing is its own views in a much more sophisticated manner. Somehow, we have also been made to believe that is the kind of universalism, and therefore many teachers, there are two things. One, they connect with their own tradition, with even yoga teachers, their own study into the scriptures is not adequate. And because of that, and also this notion of universalism, they somehow tend to distance themselves with some of the aspects. The moment they're speaking about yoga, they say, oh, this is nothing to do with Hindu religion. I mean, not that it needs to be limited from Hindu religious life, but it is the Sanatana Hindu thought is the source. Had it not been for the Sanatana thinking, such a universal tool like yoga could not have come into place, right? So this kind of proper investigation into the origins of one's own practices and seeing beyond the filters of Western universalism. I think that is required for anyone to be a little more confident in putting across. Again, this is not jingoism. This is not about beating one's own back. It's just about facts. This is where it has come from. Wherever, whatever has come has an origin. And that origin, that source needs to be honored. And the reason why you need to honor that source is because to ensure that it does not get digested. The moment you cut something from its source, it becomes highly susceptible to be distorted and digested. So yoga can undergo this process. Meditation techniques, meditation practices have undergone this process. So digestion is what one needs to be little more watchful. There are trends towards that end. So I think that yoga teachers who come out within India or elsewhere, I think they should be familiar with the whole long history of how it has originated, how it developed, and how from time to time it has gathered new strength and it has grown. I think this understanding and appreciation would help them to be more confident.
Anuradha ji, your comments, closing comments on this?
So yes, I would also possibly talk of this, but more from a subjective perspective, because we find ourselves in the same position that you were talking about. And I think that wisdom in this really lies in the Desha Kala Patra kind of a philosophy, where giving the essence sometimes is more important than the label under which it is going. So I think those who are directly, so it depends really on the audience that one is interacting with. So if it is an audience where the practice will speak more than the name under which it goes, then it's better to give the practice. Because if you give the practice, then much more than the label gets communicated. That it's a Hindu practice, So if you just somebody experiences the benefits of yoga, and they come to know that this is yoga, and this is the source of that. So we've done more than just trying to also what do you say? Sometimes lose an audience because you might have used a specific term and they have their own limited ideas about it. But when the practice is offered sometimes, then they're able to broaden their understanding of the term Hinduism. And I think at times that is more valuable than having stuck to a label and saying that, this is coming as a Hindu practice. So I think that one has to really take this by the ear and the moment. So that Desha Kala Patra, and what Vinay said is absolutely true, that one has to recognize that if the source has not been acknowledged, then distortions will follow. And for example, today's context, you have the post-lineage yoga movements that are coming up, which are actually quite worrisome, because they are saying that anything that is coming down the lineage because of certain malpractices that might have been there are to be rejected because of that, and therefore there is a new trend. So I think it is important to stand firmly. If there is a challenge, if there is a group, one should not hesitate to acknowledge it for oneself. But I think, and that's why there's no need to, because if that is what is the truth, that is where we draw our strength from. And that's the reason why we are wherever we are. I think there should be no two thoughts about that. But in terms of the packaging of the presentation, I think that one has to really be sensitive to the environment, but without being apologetic about it. I think that would be my suggestion to people. And also, if you're going to present it as, let's say, the Hindu meditation, it's a good idea to understand the philosophy underlying it. Then just again present it as this is what it is and this is what I'm talking about. Because then again, you will do injustice. If one doesn't get the spirit of the universal, I won't say universality, because I'll run into cross things with Vinay. It's not it's that Aikyata Bhava of the Sanatana Dharma that also is, I think, the hallmark of our civilization. So I think if we carry that in our teaching, then we would be doing justice to what the Sanatana Dharma is all about as well. So I think I'll say these few words and stop here. So thank you.
Thank you
very much for this opportunity.
Maybe if I can take just 2 more minutes and bring this discussion to conclusion. One is we saw how globally meditation has spread and is impacting life. And when I say meditation, it might appear to be more generic, but if you really look into what are the various kinds of meditative techniques that are popular, So I can list about 8 to 10. Say, for example, you have mantra meditation, you have transcendental meditation, you have loving kindness meditation, that is metta meditation or maitri meditation, then yoga nidra, then movement meditation, chakra meditation, zen meditation, sound meditation, and then Taoist meditation. So these are some of the various forms that exist. Maybe some 8 to 10 are important. Even of these 8 to 10, if you really go in detail into each one of them, you can easily source it to the yoga tradition itself. So wherever it might have taken a new name, again, it can't be separated from the yoga tradition. For example, the Vipassana comes from the Indic tradition, right? And if you step behind and see the set of Ekadattva Abhyasas given in the Yoga Sutra gives you a broader architecture of building any meditative technique which has already been present or a new meditation technique that can be devised. So what does it say? Maitri Karuna, the first sutra, which gives us brings the focus on the bhavana, which is the outcome of a practice. So developing of compassion or loving kindness. So these are the bhavanas of any, whatever we call a meditative process practice should have this kind of a bhavana as an outcome. Then you have prachardana vidharana abhyamava pranasya, which says connecting with breath or finding a source to anchor oneself. That is a principle of a meditative practice. Then you have Vishayavati. So whether it's a music or even walking, which is forms of meditative practice in Zen Buddhism and other places. So in this manner, up to Yathabhimata Dhyanadva, there is a very open architecture that has been provided by the Yoga Sutras, based on which all these so-called modern meditative techniques have come into existence. So by large, all these have a Sanatana origin, whatever their name might be today, yet the bulk of the influence that you see in the field has this source because of this open architecture, because this architecture recognizes individual difference, and this is quite inclusive in nature. It can hold people who are theistic in nature, atheistic in nature, and naturalistic in nature. Even within the theistic people, both the Saguna is there, Nirguna is there. So this kind of inclusivity that the Sanatana Dharma provides, I think there's unparalleled gift to the world, I guess. And therefore, it has, in the true sense, it's universal, and all the meditative practice that we see, more or less, can be connected to this architecture.
Thank you very much for these inputs, Dr. Vinayachandra and Dr. Anuradha ji. There are many issues that have come up, like the practitioner and the academician divide. So do they stay as two independent blocks, or do they have interactions with each other? And then what kind of schooling that's happening here for the teachers? So how better the schooling can be done, or kind of imparting of the Hinduness or the Hindu origins. So how can that be done? So all these issues have come up, and so this thought has been, these points have been raised. So it's a wonderful opportunity to have interacted with you, Dr. Anuradha ji and Dr. Vinayachandra ji. So I hope this has started the process of thinking about the Hindu traditions and practices. So how to convey it, how the world, it means as the Hindu Dharma is open and conveying the wisdom in a universal manner, and how can that be made to receive that universality without hiding or kind of not obliterating the source. So how can that be made receive? How can the audience be made receptive of that? So these questions are there for us, all of us, to work together and develop. So thank you very much for this wonderful. Thank you for the time and the interactions and the points and thoughts. Namaste. Thanks a lot.